Welcome into 247 Sports Live. I'm Emily Proud alongside Carl Reed and Smoke Dixon. Guys, happy draft day to all who celebrate. We certainly do, working in the business of football. We're always so lucky to get the interesting perspectives from both of these guys, but I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys today about the NFL draft, and we'll talk about some portal as well later on in the show. But let's start with the headliner. Smoke, you, of course, have experience working in an NFL front office, so give us some perspective. What's today like?
Man, it was happy draft day. This is the
Yeah.
Super Bowl for all the front office execs that's worked 364 days to get to today. So you wake up early in the morning, you have your morning coffee, and you start thinking. The first thing that you do, you go into your office and you look at that board that you've done. That's a horizontal and a vertical board. The vertical side is basically rounds 1 through 7. The horizontal side is every single position group that you have rated. And then also you make sure that your backboard, which are your free agents, are all in line. Once you do that, it's time to get the brass in that meeting. So that's your head coach and your ownership. And you sit down and you go through strategies. If you're a guy that wants to trade up or trade down, and also you're feeling calls to understand what that trade value is for whatever position that you're at. Once you get that, you get about lunchtime. Lunchtime comes in, that's when all your scouts will come in. And you present the final board that they've all worked on and say, guys, this is it. And this is going to tell us a story for the day. And with this, we're going to all just go with the board and allow the board to tell us a story. We're not going to deviate off of the board. We're going to go in the way that we want. We're not going to go through a pick that we're going to reach to go get. The board is going to tell us exactly what to do and let the board talk to us. Finally, once you get all done with that, it's going to be a long day. So you make sure that the menu is correct because you're going to have the proper meal because it's going to be a long day, and you have some fun snacks. And last but not least, those 5 guys that you have in mind that you're going to draft, make sure that you have the proper contact info. You would hate to have to call somebody, miss them because you've had 1 digit off. And that landline that goes directly to the draft is rocking and rolling and ready to go. And that's what your day looks like with proper dress, buttoned up because there's going to be a camera in there. You're going to be taking a lot of pictures. And it's your red carpet day.
Smoke, how do you handle it, though, when your board gets out of whack? If somebody takes the player that you wanted and then the next guy on your board doesn't have what you think is of value being drafted at that particular position?
Well, that's where you go into now, and you've gone through your strategies of your 5 players. If that 5th player, if that 6th player is there and you don't need them, that's when you now go back to plan B that I talked about when you talk to your ownership and say, hey, listen, that guy's not there. We are going to trade out of this spot, and the Denver Broncos, just using the name for example, is going to trade up and get the guy that they want and get into our spot. So we've already worked out those details of what we're going to do if that prospect is not there.
Yeah, we're not the only ones having fun with some of those mock drafts. You know that front offices have played the board in different scenarios as well. But I'm happy to hear that the snacks are equally as important as the draft board, as they should be on draft night. And same for us who will be able to watch it. Smoke, you were obviously able to make the transition then to being a college general manager, not because you're very talented, of course you are, but there's a lot of similarities between high school recruiting and the NFL draft process for both prospects and those making the decisions in front offices. So I'll start with you here, Smoke. I mean, what can NFL general managers learn from high school recruiting, or maybe college GMs learn from the NFL draft process?
Well, what we have to understand right now is this is a profession. When you start introducing play for play, it's now going to the version of what the NFL is doing. So there's a lot that the college GMs can learn from the NFL GMs in the front offices and also the personnel department. And the one thing that I would say is just properly go through and get the background information. And when I say that, I mean this. There's a lot of 5 stars and 4 stars that are out there, but there are a lot of 4 stars and 5 stars with 5 star and 4 star problems. If you get the talent, there's 2 ways to evaluate a prospect. You evaluate the film, but also evaluate the character off the field, because if his character off the field doesn't match up with his play on the field, what happens now is you're going to have to say, do I have enough resources within my building for facilitate that young person's need? So a lot more background check and become more tedious to the details and the information that you collect in order to purchase that right prospect for your building.
The biggest difference, Emily, for the players in the college process versus the NFL process is in the college recruiting process, they're picking the team. But for the NFL draft process, the team is picking them. So I can remember having a player that got recruited by everybody in the country. He had his pick of the litter, and also being in the same room when he was going through the NFL draft process, and he was much more nervous in that situation, waiting to see when and where he was going to get drafted than he was handling college recruiting. So it is two different processes from the standpoint. College coaches are chasing kids, but kids are chasing the opportunity to be in the National Football League.
And what I
Yeah,
would
so
follow up and say, Carl, is that the NFL is going to go on without a prospect. College
mhm.
football has to understand right now there are more college high school players that are good that you don't have to chase them. You just take them and replace them with the best. Next man up concept.
Yeah, no, both great points. I mean, along those lines, Carl, for prospects, though, you said that obviously the leverage and who has all the power is different from when you're a high school prospect to when you're going through the draft process. But what can prospects maybe learn from their time as recruits to apply it to now trying to get into the NFL?
Making sure that your character matches your film, because that's going to be a very important process about when teams are trying to decide who they're going to pick, and it can become a huge separator. Playing well, making sure that you're well coached. Some of the guys that we're going to talk about later on in the show that entered the transfer portal, I think they did an excellent job picking the guys that are going to coach them. If you want to play in the NFL, you want to go to a school that is known for producing NFL guys. You want to be in a situation where you can be well coached and allow yourself to be developed.
Well, what high school guys got to have to understand is that this: when you are being evaluated and recruited as a high school player, that's the school selling themselves to you. What you have to now understand is when you're going to become a professional in NFL, it's your obligation is for you to sell yourself to be a proper teammate and a good teammate to that NFL team that's investing millions into you. And you're going to become that name of the franchise.
I always think too, every time we talk Smoke about you giving advice to prospects on the recruiting journey, it's always about asking the right questions. I feel like there's some similarities with that too. Make sure that obviously you're the one performing for the NFL teams, but you're also asking those right questions to make sure you land at a good spot. A lot of lives will be changed tonight. I think that's why we love the NFL draft, but there will of course be some disappointment from the players who maybe thought that their name should be called tonight, but don't. Smoke, what's your message to those players?
Well, back in 2016, we were sitting in the draft room, and a guy that I knew pretty well and mentored a little bit when I was at Alabama was Reggie Ragland. And Reggie Ragland was at the draft, and he was one of the guys that was on the red carpet, brought his parents up there and had a good time, but his name wasn't called in that first round. And it's simple as just understanding this: if you aren't the first overall pick and you are an athlete that understands I have to compete and I want to be the best, you're always going to be working towards being the best. And you never want to become complacent. Complacency breeds failure. Failure breeds complacency. So you have to have the attitude is if I don't get drafted in the first round like I thought I was going to, NFL, look out for me because on the second contract, I'm going to make you pay. And you always have to create that advantage. One of the best advice that I got was from Bracy Walker as a rookie. He said, Smoke, every single day that you walk into this locker room, pretend like they're going to clean out your locker. So the day before that you're at practice or in these meeting rooms, prepare you're the best cornerback on this team. Because if you don't, the next man is coming for your job.
I've been in a situation with one of my former players, Ronnie Perkins, who was a borderline first or second round guy. That's what the mock drafts were saying. His parents and I, we rented out a hall for round one and another one for being a day 2 guy, day 2-3 pick. So he doesn't get drafted in the first round, which becomes a disappointing thing. So as you go through the second round, you're not picked. I'm sitting next to him. The party is starting to get tense and people are starting to get nervous. By the time you get to middle of round 3, you're trying to keep your guy calm. You're trying to keep everything okay, but you have to keep positive energy. At some point that night, I had got a text message from Lincoln Riley that he thought that the Patriots were going to draft him, and they ended up drafting him at the end of the third round. But it's a stressful situation being in there and also switching from being a superstar at the high school and college level to now being a role player in the National Football League when you have to fight hard every day just to stay on a roster. It's a different game. It's a man's game. And when you go through those type of processes with the kids, you really get a respect for what he had to go through pre-draft. the questions he had to answer, how he had to prepare himself for the combine, the agent's role in it, and the role that Lincoln Riley played, because I thought he brought a tremendous amount of value to him in the draft process as well.
I just think of all the scrutiny that they go through. I mean, I'm obviously excited about tonight, but I'm excited that we're going to get there and we can stop talking about maybe what we've heard from this NFL general manager or this anonymous source, that this guy is not who he says he is, all those things. That's a lot to go through the process. So let's end on a high note with reverse. Carl, who are some prospects projected outside the first round that could maybe sneak in tonight?
I really like Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker at Texas A&M. I think that he has some positional value for teams maybe like Kansas City, who are in need of linebackers, or some of the teams that might drop down in the latter part of the draft. He's one of the true linebackers still. It's a position now that's kind of going away and losing a little value, similar to what running backs are doing. But he can play inside backer, outside backer, incredible run scraper, run stopper, plays at a 45-degree downhill angle, and can drop and cover off the slot or number 3 receiver in trips looks. So I think that he brings a tremendous amount of value. Kamari Lassiter, corner at Georgia, number 3. I love Kamari Lassiter's game. He's a guy that has incredible footwork and can cover the ball in the deep part of the field. He knows how to be in phase, out of phase, and can come up and tackle in the screen game, which I think is tremendously important.
Well, Carl, those are 2 good picks, man, but I got 2 guys for you. The first guy for me, I'm going to say, is Xavier Legette. Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. Big, fast, explosive. Hand snatcher with the football. And when he gets the ball in his hands, that guy's getting ready to score. He went to the combine and did exactly what he wanted to do. He ran 4 threes, tested off the charts. He's the guy that his best football is ahead of him. And you get him into the right situation at the bottom of the first with a really good team, with a really good quarterback that can get the ball to him, he can be a household name in the future. The next guy I have up, cornerback from Rutgers, Max Melton. Just remember that name. He reminds me so much of Deontay Banks, the guy that we had at Maryland. 5'11" and change, 190. He can play inside, over the slot. He can play outside, physical tackler. Ran a 4.3, 40-inch vertical, 11.4 broad jump. Athleticism out of this world, but the thing that he can do is he can cover. And when you put that ball in his air, tremendous ball production. Whenever you're looking for a corner in the NFL, the number 1 attribute that I always look for, can he get the ball back when the ball is in the air? Because the ball's going to be in the air a ton. Because quarterbacks are the highest marketed guys. They throw the ball, you got to get a guy to get it back. Xavier Legette, Max Melton, my 2 guys.
I love it. All right. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen tonight, but we can certainly expect to see a lot of offensive linemen go tonight, because really at any stage of football, the big guys up front are always extremely valuable. Along those lines, we want to show you this tweet that came from Carl earlier this week. I haven't talked to a college coach in the last 90 days that hasn't said, Reed, we need O-linemen. If you can really play offensive line, this era is special for you. Carl, we know you only have a certain number of characters on a tweet, but we got you on the show. So tell us, what makes offensive linemen so valuable in what you said, this era of college football?
Number 1, you're the foundation of every team. Number 2, because of the transfer portal era, guys are not being developed. There used to be schools where offensive linemen could go in red shirt, then they could play on the scout team. And by year 3, you had been in the weight room, you had learned to scheme, and you could become a tremendously valuable player. Now, the transfer portal has hurt coaches in terms of the offensive line is one of the positions that you really want to have continuity at, but it's hard to get it. So now it becomes a talent thing. And so you are having to pay top premium dollars to get a good offensive lineman. A Power 4 coach told me last summer that one of his linemen threatened to leave and go to another school, and he had to pay him because it would have cost him double to get a new kid to replace the kid that had just left.
Well, Carl, you know what? At the end of the day, there's a few things, is looking at it from the front office point of view. A lot of it is there aren't very good college offensive line coaches that are teaching the proper fundamentals of playing offensive line. 2, a lot of college offensive coaches are going to a style of football that's not conducive of teaching a young man that plays the offensive line position step by step of proper hand placement, foot placement, hat placement. So there's years that's missing of this young person's development. And when you finally get this young man developed to where you want him and he plays a year, everyone comes and poach, because we all understand that the hardest thing to get is an offensive line coach that's qualified, but second, an offensive line coach that can develop young offensive linemen, because most of offensive linemen are 6'4", 300-pound guys that need to get physically developed, mentally developed to play the game of battle within 6 inches from each other.
Okay, so finding an offensive line coach that's qualified is a whole different conversation. So let's stick with the players here. If everybody is looking for those offensive linemen, Smoke, where are they? Who are some impact offensive linemen that you've seen hit the portal during the spring window?
Well, the one that's going to impact this team the most is the guy that's going back to this team, Caden Proctor. He was a freshman that started from game 1 to the end of the season, left and came back, and his position has been there waiting on him. So Caden Proctor is a guy that got developed last year to play the level of football that when he came out of high school, he was going to play. So that guy right there is the number one guy for me in that position.
Carl, who you got?
I'm going to go, my first guy that I really like is Branson Hickman. Branson Hickman played center at SMU. He just committed to the University of Oklahoma. When you turn this guy's tape on, this is clinic film. Smoke just talked about hand placement, hat in the right place. I saw this guy reach a 3 technique on an inside zone run, which is only guys like Kelsey that plays on the Philadelphia Eagles. He has similar traits. Guys that are back blocking on gap schemes, his ability to set the protection. This is a big-time player. He's leaving one great offensive line coach at SMU and going and playing for another one at Oklahoma and Bill Bedenbaugh. I think that he's a tremendous, tremendous offensive lineman, and I can't see a center outplaying him in college football this season.
Oh, some high praise. Unfortunately, for the teams that are still looking for an offensive lineman, only one player mentioned, Jason Zandamela, is technically available in the portal. And only a few minutes ago, our friend Chris Hummer, alongside 2 of the members of Swamp 247, Blake Alderman and Jacob Rudner, all putting in crystal balls for him to land at Florida. This is before he plans to actually visit the Gators this weekend. So far, so good for them to add a piece on their front. Let's look at some teams just overall who have made a lot of noise so far in the portal. First, we got to start in Colorado. Always really making noise when it comes to the portal. And I think it's safe to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, I mean, the assumption was that maybe last year's historic portal usage was just kind of that initial bump to get Coach Prime the squad that he wanted to start off strong. But it sounds like based on the large numbers in and out this year too, this is just kind of how it's going to be done here. So from your point of view, Carl, what's happening in Boulder this cycle?
Well, I think that 70% of those guys have been known that they weren't going to be back on the team probably since November, December. And just the way that it happened, April 15th was the first day that many of them could get in the portal. You're going to have, no matter where you go, you're going to have roster turnover. And he had some roster turnover. But one of the reasons that we talk about it all the time is because he's the only coach that gives unprecedented access to everything that's going on his team through Well Off Media, through the Amazon show. So I think the roster is shaping up kind of the way that he wants it to from the standpoint of the guys they've added and some of the guys that have moved on.
Well, Carl, this goes back to what I said at the beginning. The missing piece of this whole thing is proper research of the players that you are bringing into your building. At no means should you be able, or you should want to bring a player in for a few months and get him back out. So the thing that you have to do, that I would believe if I'm at Colorado, what I would do is and look into what I'm doing in terms of an organization. Are we getting the proper players in place to play? Are we going through all the fine details of the player, the person, and is he a good fit for what we have going on? Because if it's consistently a roster turnover every single year, you're not going to build the continuity and a culture that you want in your team. And I understand what you're saying. He's one of the few that's allowed so much access to his facility, but also you have to look at yourself and say, are we doing the right things? Are we taking the right steps and getting the right people in our building to sustain success over a long period of time?
Well, one of the things, Smoke, when you look at transfer portal recruiting, it's completely different than high school. High school is a very thorough process over a long period of time. Transfer portal is more like speed dating. So when you have to fill a need and you decided to go into the portal, you kind of got to deal with it. Duke has had 7 basketball players, which is over 50% of their team, going to transfer portal, but they won't be scrutinized in the same way because they don't allow that type of access. So you're not really tuned into that unless you're really in the know.
And what I'm saying, Carl, I'm not pointing a finger at one place. I'm pointing the finger at the process of it. And no, it's not speed dating because we all understand that every coach and every program poaches players. So if you have the right people in place and the right personnel department in place, you are collecting information before you bring that player into your building. Instead of poaching and begging and asking that player to come play for you, you should do further research to understand who that player is before you bring him into your building. Again, you have the bag, you have the money, you have the resources to do that. And also, you are the bank. They have to come see you. You don't always have to go follow behind that person, that player, to get him into your building to now eliminate him in 6 to 7 months.
Coaches poach players?
Absolutely. It happens all the time.
We're all shocked to learn that, Smoke. That is brand new information. No, I mean, I think that the cut downs are happening at every program, and it would be naive to say that every player that's leaving Colorado is exactly what was Coach Prime intended. It's not like that at any program across the country. There's tons of coaches being blindsided by some of their prospects that they thought were going to stick with the team headed into the portal. So it's kind of a product of what's happening now. And I think that there's a place that you can look to, and Michigan State is one of those programs too. I mean, a coaching change will generally indicate that heavy portal usage that we see in year one, and that's exactly what's happening. But for Jonathan Smith, he's seen 14 scholarship players, 2 walk-ons at the portal during the spring window. We know that there's the cut down days that we call the exit meetings that are going on, but one of those players is a player that I'm, fairly certain he did not sit down and ask him to leave the program, and that's 4-star edge rusher by Job from the 23 class. He was the highest signee in school history. So, Smoke, I'll start with you on this one. What would you attribute this kind of exodus to in East Lansing?
Failure to understand your purpose in football. I remember recruiting by Joe when I was at Vanderbilt, and he's a raw, athletic kid that needs time on task. And when you are at a place at Michigan State, you had a coach that you came in with, you had a previous relationship with him. Sometimes you get emotionally attached. And like Carl and I have always said, when you're involved in college football, the emotional attachment needs to be removed. You need to understand that this is a business. And for a young man as such that needs development, my advice to him and to him to get to where he needs to get to is understand that you need to sit down, relax, take the proper coaching. And it's going to be different because if you work yourself to the next level, you're going to have different coaches come in. So this is a part of the process of being a professional, of being patient, take your lessons, get bigger, stronger, faster, and adapt to any circumstances that you are put in front of.
Well, it's very normal, guys, for players to leave after coaching changes, especially when you go through spring and you realize that this might not be a personality fit for me. The previous staff, Mel Tucker, defensive coordinator Scotty Hazelton, they have completely different personalities than Joe Rossi, who came in as the D coordinator to Michigan State. So sometimes it's those type of things where things are just going to be done differently. You signed up for one thing, it's changed to another. Also, a large number of those guys are guys that I'm sure have been moved on because they weren't going to get playing time, and you got to free up spots. So you have both situations working at the same time.
Nothing to quite panic about. We've been through a few cycles of this to know that this is fairly regular. I will say our friends at Spartan Tailgate are doing a fantastic job of tracking all of this. They have a whole Google spreadsheet that you can check out every player that's come in and every player that's left, and they have a total 73 of the 85 scholarships are filled right now. So they will definitely be buyers, as we will say, in the market right now, looking to fill out the rest of their roster. Let's finish with this as we wind things down in this portal window. It ends next week. Let's look kind of big picture and evaluate Obviously, college football is facing some major issues. We're not going to fix them with one quick segment, but let's talk about those immediate fixes. The windows have already shrunk. We've already seen some adjustments each cycle when it comes to the transfer portal. So I'll start with Carl here. What is just a small tweak that maybe would make this process a little bit better in the immediate future?
Well, I think the biggest tweak that needs to come right now is the coaches have to adjust their mentality to understand that this is what it is. The NCAA gave them the system that they wanted because everybody was against rules until the rules affected them. And so behind the scenes, a lot of coaches that voted for a set of rules when the NCAA first started talking about this, they wanted the two-time transfer when those transfers were at their particular schools. So this is the system that you have. The NCAA gave it to you as you chose to run with it. So you have to adjust. You have to stop complaining. You have to accept things for the way that they are, and you have to move forward with it. And the people who can master this era of transfer portal and NIL are the people that are going to own college football in the future.
Well, Carl, you know what? The rule that I would like to implement is just allow legal tampering. Give a week window of where you can go in and investigate the prospects that are potentially getting in the portal. Because we all know that once you put your name in, compliance has to clear you for any other institution to contact you. Allow that tampering process to happen, give them a week, so you now can go through, do your proper research so we don't see the bounce backs and the 2 times transfers if you give the team the proper time to take care of their own business and find out who the player is.
Ooh, I like both of those suggestions. Legal tampering, we see that in the NFL, and I like Carl. Quit making new rules and just accept the rules as they are. Just a little mindset shift. I love it. We always get the real talk from Carl here. We have one quick viewer question. It seems like people loved our draft talk. So our friend Armando asks, who was your #1 defensive tackle on the draft board? Smoke, you want to start us off?
I'm gonna go with Texas Byron Murphy, a guy that can get up the field, ultra disruptive, and in the age of what we're looking for is to get into the quarterback. You have a guy that can come in, give you 8+ sacks, be very, very affordable in the run game and knock guys back. But his explosiveness, his hand placement, his ability to get to the quarterback and play the run has him as my #1 defensive tackle in the draft.
Smoke, you took the words right out of my mouth. Total package for the young man. He's going to be a rich, rich guy by the end of the day.
I love it. We're going to find out here in a few hours if that is correct. Looking forward to the NFL draft tonight. Thank you both for the extensive breakdown. And of course, we got to talk portal. It is a day that ends in Y, which means that there is portal news. It is happening everywhere. So thank you both so much for the great discussion. Hey, remember to subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube channel if you are not already. More daily content like this right here on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Best of luck tonight to your favorite team in the draft, and thanks for watching.